terms of the public perception, I feel like I can understand that because it is a very hard thing to perceive in your day-to-day life.
Part of the difficulty is because the climate system conspires to make it difficult. We have seasons. Every single winter we have people come out of winter and they're not really sure that climate change is real. They come out of the following summer and they go, yes, climate change is happening. And unfortunately, the seasonal cycle alone is enough to confuse people. And that's just because, people live and breathe today's weather. They don't feel the progressive warming of the planet.
I mean, climate change is a really big, complex problem beyond. It's not just a scientific problem. It's tied up with, political and economic and social issues.
It's a very difficult field of science, because it spans so many different disciplines. So I think communication is the key in this case. You need to find a way to take the science that we produce and make it digestible to the general public. And only then will you actually see people asking the government and really forcing the government to go out and do something.
All I really know is what my job is, and my job is to make sure that the scientific information that's relevant to the climate change story is as accurate as possible and as valuable as possible. It's really up to others to decide whether that information is going to be acted on in particular ways.
In recent years I've started to realise that the problem with us taking action now is not perhaps that we don't have enough research, but it is constantly a fight to make sure that the research that we do have gets heard properly outside of scientific circles, and it's probably a fight that we're not winning at the moment.
Look, the most important thing is to communicate the science accurately, and that's the climate science community has been doing this for 50 years. In the 1960s, the first science came out spelling the warnings of ongoing greenhouse gas emissions. President Carter in the late 70s commissioned a report on the dangers of ongoing carbon emissions, and he was told at the time that this is a problem, we need to urgently move away from fossil fuels in terms of a source of electricity and for powering transport.
And they say that the reason why we should believe climate science is because there's a consensus that the globe is warming, it's because of humans, etc. I think people then think that somehow science works by consensus, or that someone has decided that this is the way it's going to be, and then all the other scientists have gone, okay, that sounds good, let's do that. The truth is the complete opposite of that. Scientists are so argumentative and so hate being wrong and so love to argue with their peers that it's like a constant battle amongst everyone. And then if there's one viewpoint that actually ends up coming out of this constant battling, then that viewpoint is extremely valid, and we know it's going to be very close to the truth. So I think if people understood a bit more just how argumentative scientists were in the field, they might have a bit more respect for the side of these major viewpoints that end up coming out from the research.
Scientists are not particularly well suited to communicating a lot of this stuff, which is unfortunate because in the last 10 or 15 years there's been such a concerted campaign to distort what the scientific community has actually found.
You've got, unfortunately, some powerful institutions and individuals who are putting out messages, finding somebody under a rock who will say it's not happening.
We've got industries that are really against action because they're fossil fuel dependent, and some of those industries are propping up the so-called skeptics, the deniers of climate change science. And these folks are well resourced, and they're going around telling a message that's a feel-good message. You don't have to worry. Carbon emissions don't change the world's climate. Things are cool as they are, and this is unfortunately completely untrue. And the science is clouded by these messages from the anti-science community, and so people are left with a confused message, and they decide, well, who do we believe? That guy in a suit or that guy in a suit? And it's been a very difficult communication message.
I think there is a misconception about the political views of climate scientists. People see them as somehow greeny environmentalists or something because they're espousing a certain viewpoint. But I think if you were to meet any group of scientists, climate scientists, you'll find that they are just ordinary people with a range of political views. And the one thing that's very clear is their political views don't drive the science that they do.
It has a lot to do with people thinking that their life and their convenience will be affected.
I think the most important thing to do really is to convince people not to be afraid of making changes, because I really think that the two things that have gotten in the way of people accepting this problem for what it is that they start thinking about what they might be asked to do or might be asked to pay if they acknowledge the problem, and that makes them not want to accept it.
I think if we make clear that it's not that hard to do something, that it's not changing the whole economy, that it's not impacting all of your life, I think that would be a start.
It's really not that scary. The things that we have to do are things that we can do. They do require a concerted thought and action, but I think you know, our societies have done this before. We've been faced with other challenges, and we can do it now.